and there was a ERP system of old version, and then the S4 HANA came. So what are the challenges which business or the IT department felt in the older versions? So if you see this slide, you see the SAP ERP in the center and SAP CRM, SCM, SRM, these are on the periphery. So all these were in different servers. So CRP, ERP was in one server, SRM was in another, CRM was another server. The reason for this was because SAP ERP had an old data model and it was very slow in system, and there was too much of data redundancies in ERP, and it had so much of data volume that SAP couldn't think of putting CRM and SRM in the same system as that of ERP because of these reasons. So they opted for another design where SAP ERP, CRM and SRM would sit in another system or another servers, so that at least they will be faster. If they had merged together, then the system would have become more slow. So this was the one reason why uh, all these were in separate servers. And because of different servers, there were a heavy server maintenance cost, and the cost of ownership also increased. So to mitigate this, uh, SAP came out with this new version of S4 HANA. So we'll see the different challenges in detail. So these were the IT challenges which was faced. First is the big data explosion. Now this big data is a very common and a frequent term which is being used nowadays. So this big data is nothing but, I'll just give you one example. So previously one organization will create 20 sales order in a day because it was only selling to the wholesalers and not to the retailers. So wholesalers will sell to retailers and retailers to final consumers. But now, because of the competition in business, business need not have to only sell to the wholesalers. It may approach direct to the consumers. So consumers can be contacted and consumers can buy straight away from the manufacturing plant itself. So previously, when 20 sales orders were being created, now a daily 500 to 1000 sales orders are being created by the same business. So there is a big data explosion. Uh, People are using system more than ever before. Like for example, our personal use only. When we had old models of mobiles, we used to only use the mobile to receive and make calls. But now mobile we are storing data, we are downloading apps, we are doing transactions. So if you see what was our consumption of data previously and now, so it is a huge consumption now. So this is a big data explosion. So because of this big data, I, the whole world has witnessed, and so the systems should be equipped to handle this big data. Then comes the Internet of Things. So Internet things may business wanted more sophistication. They would like that once vendor invoices come, it can be scanned, and and the vendor invoice verification should be done, and simultaneously the accounting entry should be posted. So this type of sophistication has called for business or the IT companies to make improvements in their products so that they can handle uh, uh, things more faster. And business has increased so much that a vendor invoice, they were, if they were creating some 2000 vendor invoice in a day, now they are creating to 20,000 vendor invoices in a day. So they would like to have sophistications or a fast system where by scanning a vendor invoice they can make the entries, the accounting entries and everything. So the Internet of Things have changed the world. And we have seen the previous slide where uh, There was a separate server for ERP system and separate server for CRM and SRM systems. Now uh, that called for multiple server maintenance. So the server maintenance was huge because of the different systems. And this second point is a traditional ETL system. So this is relating to the BW system or the data warehousing system. So for data warehousing, system was in a different server. So through extraction, the data used to go from the ERP system and go to the BW system, and it had its own issues because of the data being in two different systems. There were reconciliation issues. Master data was created in ERP system but was not available in this. So it was not totally never real time or online. So whenever the extraction program were extracting once in a week or in a day, then the data was available in BW system. And the business would see it only once the entire thing is completed. So it was never a real time analytics. So analytics was never a real time. So even today night, if the extraction program is running and it is sending the data to the BW, the user can see the reports next day. So on the next day when he is seeing the report, the data would be till the previous night and not the real time. And because of the multiple servers and it was having too much of redundancies of data, and so it was ending up in a huge hardware cost. So these are the challenges which IT faced, and so they were looking that how improvements can be made so that it can handle the big data explosion and the functionality of Internet of Things, and at the same time reduce the cost. So SAP S4 HANA has taken all these things into its bucket and try to resolve the things. Then the business challenges came. So the business challenges was of the complex user interface. So the in the traditional SAP system or the previous versions of SAP system, you had to go to multiple fields, and SAP GUI was used, and SAP GUI was not that user friendly, and there was no user experience in that. So even doing a small transactions used to take a considerable amount of time. So everybody was looking for apps, that how can a user-friendly apps be created where user has to go to very minimalist fields and complete the transactions. So there were other ERPs also or other softwares which were having their own apps. So SAP also thought that they should also have different apps, and so with that they have come with with apps which are called as Fiori. So now there are Fiori apps which a user can download and on their mobile or on their laptops or any so it will give you a lot of mobility. So a person who is sitting in the airport lounge and he wants to see what is the stock of a particular finished goods in a particular factory, then he in our particular plant, then he can just scroll through his mobile and through the app and see that what is the stock of a particular finished goods in a particular plant of his factory. So so slower transaction processing. So transactions also used to take a lot of time. So after putting so many fields and applying values, and when you are saving the transactions, it will take at least 2 to 3 minutes to save the transactions. So it depends on the whatever transactions you are doing, and there was slower reporting also. So the reports had to go to multiple tables, and going through all the tables, they were having issues. So I had faced that same issue in one of my projects. where the users want to see what are the customer and vendor open items for a particular profit center. So SAP is already given the programs where you want to see what are the outstandings of vendors for a particular profit center. But whenever they were executing the report, it used to take a lot of time, and then sometimes at the end it used to go in dump. So we had to constantly get in touch with the technical person and to resolve that. So that was because of the traditional way of data storage and all. And that client was on the older version of ECC version of SAP. So quite a few reports were non-executable. So these are, so once the reports become non-executable, they become outdated. So the users may not like to now execute those reports, because now and then when they execute these reports, they go in dump, or they do not provide the results as required. So because of these outdated reports, business was also having a challenge. And like there were different tables for finance and CO module, and for asset accounting, and for material ledger. So there was a constant need at the month end to do the reconciliation between FI and CO, and FI and asset management, so that uh, uh, if there are some differences, they can be resolved. So all these things has been taken by care by the S4 HANA, and they have tried to mitigate these issues or challenges. So what are the benefits of S4 HANA? So S4 HANA Business Suite, it is a new product with a new generation of business applications, and it is fully built on in-memory platform. So as I told you, in-memory means ROM being read access memory being part of um, uh, ROM be part of being part of RAM, and so it is more faster, provides an instant single source of truth. So but there are so many different tables in asset accounting, and in core controlling, costing, and all those things. So there is one single table has come, which represents the single source of truth, which is called the AC Doka table. And so now there are real-time processes. So now the analytical system, which is BW, is embedded. So if you want to see some reports from BW, they will turn out to be real time, not like, because it is using only one extractor. So like in previous system where the analytical reports were not real time, they have now become more real time. And with use of Fiori, more and simpler user experiences happened, and the data footprint of your company has reduced. So quite a few aggregate tables and indexes tables have been removed, and because of this removal of table or lessening down of tables, uh, the the data footprint has reduced considerably. And SAP S4 HANA comes with, as I explained earlier, comes with the choice of deployments, which is on-premise and cloud. So if you want to reduce your hardware cost and want the SAP servers to be on rental basis, then you can go for cloud system, where the cost will be reduced to a larger extent. So one of the most important thing of SAP S4 HANA is that it is based on the HANA database. So in the traditional SAP system like ECC, the database could be Oracle or Sybase, but now it is only HANA database. So it is HANA and nothing else. So these are the benefits of. So let us see what are the benefits of the HANA database. So as I explained earlier, in memory RAM and ROM. So in ERP, RAM and ROM were separate, and now RAM will include ROM, ROM in HANA database. So now the system will become more faster. So for example, when you do a transactions, RAM is used, but when you save the transactions, ROM is used. So if RAM, if you do some transactions, then if first will go, the system will go to RAM, and then it will go to ROM, and again come back to RAM, and then the data will be saved. But now, then since they both are in the same system, it will take much more lesser time to complete the transactions, and so system will be much faster. So it is in memory. And now row based versus column based storage. So SAP started with the row based storage from R2 version. So when SAP started in the R2 version, it had only two modules, which is finance and HR. So since it was only two modules, it didn't have much tables and much storage of data, so they started with the row based storage. But suddenly they afterwards they realized that as and when the business increased, then the row based storage is not that helpful. So report speed depends on how many columns are there in the tables. So a report with 15 fields will take time, as it is go through several hundred tables of a table. So a report might have only 15 fields, but to execute that report, it has to go to the table, or if there are five tables, the report using five tables, and each table is having 100 columns, then it has to go to several columns, and then the report is gets executable. So the report will take time. But in SAP S4 in HANA, we have main tables irrespective of number of columns it will take much time. So now the in the columnar data storage, uh, uh, they will have only the main tables, as the indices and the aggregate tables have been removed. So irrespective of how many tables columns are there, it will take much more lesser time to execute the report. And the HANA database comes with compression of data. So data is formed in compressed form. For example, there is a table called BKPF, which if it takes 10 GB in the previous version of SAP, that is in ECC, but in HANA, it will take only 2 GB. This is just an example. So it will take only 20% of what data it was taking previously. So because of the compression of data, you don't require that much of data storage, and it is a lesser data footprint. So lesser storage space is required. So therefore, there will be less hardware costs. And there were quite a few tables, like example for customer vendor open items. So there was a table for BSEC, which was also storing the data, and there were some table for customer vendor open items. They were also storing the similar data. So there were a lot of data redundancies. So same data was stored in multiple tables in ERP. So with the S4 HANA, they have removed that. So what are the new FI functionality in S4 HANA? So previously, what I have discussed or showed you is what are the benefits of SAP S4 HANA in general, which affects all the modules. So the speed, the better user experience. So people who are working in different modules or different departments, they all will experience the same. So now we come specifically to the FI function, that what are the new FI functionalities which are been given by SAP S4 HANA finance module. So we talked about this AC DOCA table. So there is a concept called universal journal, which is nothing but the table AC DOCA. So if you see, there's a merging of five big functionality in one. So for costing, you had some different tables, management accounting. For asset accounting, we had in material ledger, in profitability, in GL account. So all these tables have merged in this one table, AC DOCA table. So it is a single source of truth. So since there is a one table, you do not have to reconcile. So you don't have to reconcile the asset accounting with finance, or the costing or management accounting reports with finance. So since everything is sitting in one single table, the reconciliation process has simplified. So this is the one biggest advantage of FI advantage is the AC Doka table. Then the available currencies in ERP and S4 HANA. So new functionality has come in this S4 HANA. So where in ERP we were using three local currencies in FI, first currency, second and third currency, and CO2 currency and three currency in material ledger. But now the whole thing is changed in SAP S4 HANA, where you can have per company code and per ledger two fixed currencies, which is local and global currency. So for each company code and for each ledger, if you have one local and global currency, plus you have 8 freely defined currencies. So here you can freely define your currencies. So if you want that, you can have the Chinese yuan as your first currency, and then the Japanese currency, and the the European currencies. So you can, so if there's some business who is dealing all over the world, would like to see the reports in different currencies. So S4 HANA has given that you can have 8 freely defined currency, and that is in addition to the local and the global currencies. And that is for each company code and ledger. So for each ledger, you can have these 8 plus 2. So in total 10 currencies. So from 3 currencies, now it has come to 10 currencies. So this is the benefit of S4 HANA Finance. Then simple finance architecture has come. So before, there were the aggregate table and indices table. So there were aggregate tables in asset management, in GL, in consolidation, in accounts payable, accounts receivable, in general ledger, there were indices table. So these particular aggregate indices table have been removed and they have been replaced with HANA views on the fly. So these are replaced with HANA views. And this FI and CO, which had different financial documents. So now there is a combined FI CO document. And the interfaces will remain as it is. So quite a few tables have been aggregated indices tables have been reduced, has been replaced with the HANA views, and these financial documents, which was generated separately for FI and CO module, they have been combined in S4 HANA Finance. So this is again, if you see these tables, so here if you see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tables are there, which will remain as it is here after in S4 HANA. And these tables of COB, COEP, SCOS, COSP, and these BSIC, BSID tables, these all have become compatible views. So this many tables were there before, and now you will have 5 tables and then views. So you see how much improvements have made, and the tables have been removed. So because of this tables removal, uh, one can get reports from a lesser number of tables. So reports can be faster because of the simplified structure. Another big benefit in finance has happened is of the financial close. So when the financial close was happening, so this is just a slide which shows you some figures. So they were taking 20 days to do a month end close or year end close or quarter close, and the best was that it should take 3 days, but the business was targeting that they should get even in within a day they should be able to close the books. So that was the aim of business, and SAP S4 HANA has been successful to a certain extent, or to quite a good amount of so there is a elimination or acceleration of batch jobs. So there were so many programs which are running in batches, and when these batches will run overnight and they may take the whole night, even the next day and something, and Like there were some programs like for work, WIP calculation or settlement of production orders, or I so so these programs had to be run at the month end so that you can draw the balance sheet and the profit and loss account. So these jobs will take their on time good amount of time they used to take. So now uh, this batch running of the batch jobs have been eliminated or they have been accelerated. Then you had this inter-period reconciliation where you will reconcile your from if one company code has done some transactions for another company, then you do this cross company code reconciliations or any other type of reconciliation. So nowadays these programs can do the reconciliation in real time. So everyday reconciliation can happen so that month end you don't have to reconcile too much. And there is a harmonization of FI and CO, so internal and external accounting. So internal and external accounting has harmonized, or so FICO, there is no reconciliation is required uh, because everything is coming from the SC DOCA table. And so business benefits is that more up-to-date managerial reporting will become and enable more soft close and intra. So soft close can be possible, and the lower cost of close. So closing activity which was going at a very high cost previously. So they because of the time period. So if the activity which was taking some 10 days to complete, and if the same activities can be finished in a day or two, then the resources can use their time to do some other activities, or you may require a lesser amount of resources. So there were some 10 people who are busy with month end closing. So now we may require maybe 2 people or 3 people to do the month end closing. So business can reduce the cost uh, in many ways. So in new asset accounting, so this is one module, sub module in FI, which has got many changes, quite a few changes in S4 HANA. So because of the streamlined model, depreciation posting has become very fast. And since if the depreciation posting has become very fast, the financial close, the closing of business also becomes very fast. So as I told you in the previous slide, if the depreciation program itself took half a day to run, will now take 2 hours to finish up the uh, to finish the depreciation run. So once the depreciation is calculated and is posted in the books of accounts, that is one of the very big steps in month-end closing. And since because of the AC DOCA table, there are quite a few tables like asset related tables like ANAP, NAK. These are all the asset related tables. So which have been removed, and they are all part of the AC DOCA table. So data redundancy has been moved, and now you can have different depreciation area which will represent different accounting principles like the US GAAP or the Indian GAAP, and you can post the transactions as per requirement. So like if the Indian GAAP is saying that you want uh, that that the depreciation key should be 10%, but the US GAAP is saying that it is 15%. And so whenever you sell the asset, the profit as per the different gaps will be different because the written down value of the asset will be different for the US GAAP and the Indian GAAP because the depreciation rate is different. So previously we had to run some program, additional program to do this, and we had to create one delta depreciation area because the depreciation rates were different as in the different gaps. So now it is not required. So the delta depreciation area or running of that program is not required. The new asset accounting system will take care of all this. So even if as per the different gap, if the asset is having different depreciation rates, then system will calculate and post depreciation differently in uh, different accounting principles. So this is one of the major improvements in S4 HANA. And now there's a concept of asset offsetting or a clearing account has come. So previously, when the accounting entry was happening, it will go to the asset account debit, and when it'll do the vendor credit. So asset is capitalized, and the asset account GL account is debited, and the vendor from whom the asset is purchased, the vendor is credited. But now the system will throw two accounting entries. So one will be asset will be debited, and the asset offsetting or clearing account will be credited, and the asset clearing account will be debited and vendor account is credited. So this is happening because as per the different valuations, you may like to do asset capitalization in a different manner. So one particular gap of a particular country says that when I purchase the asset, whatever the freight is there on the asset, it should be capitalized in the asset. But another gap or another country capitalization says that no, the whatever the freight you are occurring on the asset should go to the expense account, and it should not be capitalized in the asset. So in that particular cases, you can post the asset value differently in different depreciation areas, or which represent the different gaps. So in one particular gap, you can capitalize the asset with the freight, and in another gap, you can do the asset capitalizations without the freight value. So this is just an example I'm giving. So there can be another type of examples. So all these things which are not possible previously, it is now possible in the S4 HANA system. So as we know, we have this concept of ledgers. So which is, these ledgers are nothing but they facilitate the parallel accounting. So nowadays business is not only interested in the local gap, but it will have to give its books as per the gaps of other the head office. So if there is a company in India which is going as per the Indian gap, but if it is has its main office in USA, then it will have to give its balance sheet and profit and loss account as per the US gap also for consolidation purpose. So it has to create two balance sheet and profit and loss account, one for the US gap and one for the Indian gap. And the balance sheet which is for the Indian gap, it will submit to the legal authorities in India, and which is at the US gap, it will send it to its office in USA, who will submit there. So because the US gap would like to see the operations or the profit and loss account out of India business as per the US gap, because they are not bothered about the India gap. So the concept of ledgers came, so which will denote the different gaps. So if you have the local gap, which is the India gap, and IFRS is the international financial standards, so reporting standards. So they would like to have a journal entry for bonus payment, which will be treated in two different ways of two different amounts. So this will call for different presentations in different ways. So you have to make a lot of adjustment entries as per the local gap or as per the US gap. So there is a need for different ledgers. So we have this concept of leading and the non-leading ledgers, which was there in the previous version of, for example, in the ECC version. But in S4 HANA, there is one more concept came of extension ledgers. So the extension ledger came in addition to leading and the non-leading ledgers. So leading ledger will have all the postings are taken as primarily and based on the accounting principle that is used for consolidation of financial statements. Okay, so there is a Japanese company who is operating in Japan, and it is a company in India. So The leading ledger will be as per the Japanese law or the Japanese GAAP, because the consolidation will happen in Japan. So the leading ledger will be of the Japan GAAP, and the non-leading ledger will be of India GAAP. So non-leading ledger are parallel ledgers to the leading ledger, and they can be of the accounting principle of the country. So if that a Japanese company is having one company code in India, and it has to give its balance sheet and profit and loss accounts as per the Indian GAAP also, and it has to also prepare the balance sheet profit as per the US GAAP. So it will take out the balance sheet and profit and loss account from the leading ledger for the Japan GAAP, and for the non-leading ledger, it will take out the, so balance sheet profit and loss accounts as per different ledgers is possible. And now with S4 HANA, they have come with the extension ledgers. So extension ledgers is for for some simulation purpose. So the extension ledgers are on top of the underlying ledger. So you create an extension ledger in relation to the leading or the non-leading ledgers. So leading and non-leading ledgers are called as standard ledgers. So extension ledger are top. So extension ledger will have all the entries of the leading and the non-leading ledger, but on top of that, you want to do some simulations, or you want to post some more data in the close periods, or for consolidation purpose, some different data, or you want to do the evaluation of foreign exchange items in a different way on top of what is done in the leading and non-leading ledgers, then you can do that. So this functionality of extension ledger has come in S4 HANA. So extension ledgers, these are some example of extension ledgers, like performing postings of different accounts for consolidation, or you want to do some post non-invoice contract as revenue to simulate numbers. So for simulation purpose, you want to do some sales revenue data to understand what is your profit. So those things can be possible in this extension ledgers. So now we come to the master data section. So what is the changes in the master data that has happened in S4 HANA Finance? So master data has changed radically in uh, in S4 HANA Finance, in a way that customer vendors master record, which was we used to do and create a customer vendors. Now we create business partners. So that is a big change which has come in S4 HANA Finance. So now the concept of business partner has come. So business partner uh, can be your customer, debtor, a tenant, or loan recipient. Okay, so this is from the customer side. So employees can be your business partner, similarly way creditor and vendor also. So vendors which were created in a very simple way in the older version, now we have to go through the business partner route and create these. So the transaction code and the way they are created has changed considerable in S4 HANA. So whatever the way we were creating creditors and vendors in ECC system has changed, and now we have to go through the business partner route to create them. So this is one very big change which has happened in the uh, master data as well. The master data is connected. Then one more big change has come in the general ledger. So there is a conversion or the merging or the convergence of the general ledger account and the cost element. So previously in the ECC system, we had general ledger master data separate and corresponding cost element separate. So we used to go to two different screens and create this general ledger account and the cost element. So now the general ledger account and the cost element has merged into one. So cost element has merged in general ledger. So if you see this field cost element category, and it is showing one, and this is the drop down. So whenever a GL account is of expense, then we create with 01 category with primary cost. And if a GL account is of sales revenue, then we do it with 11 revenue. So whatever these were created separate cost element, now we mention this cost element category in the GL master record. So this field, additional field has come now, called the cost element category, to record what this GL account is of cost, is cost element, and of which category. So this has become one important improvement in S4 HANA. And whenever you create a GL account at the chart accounts level, there is one more field called GL account type. So in this GL account type, you mention that is it an expense or an income account, it is a revenue account, or it is a secondary cost. So secondary cost means there was some separate secondary cost element was created separately in ECC version. So those secondary cost elements are created as GL accounts in S4 HANA. So secondary cost elements uh, which were created separately are now part of the GL master record, and you have to mention what GL account type is there. So you choose this S, secondary cost, when you create a secondary cost element as a GL account. So this is another big change as for master data is concerned. So what is the new methodology in S4 HANA? So now we are coming to the end of this session. So, so whenever you implement any SAP project, you use a particular methodology. So previously we were using the ASAP methodology. So the ASAP methodology was uh, of project preparation, business blueprint, realization, final preparation, go live and support. So the ASAP methodology was following the Big Bang approach. So by meaning Big Bang means everything is goes live at one go at one particular time. So there are no in between go lives. So one but entire thing go live in a Big Bang approach at one time. So there we had some shortcomings, that when we are creating a business blueprint, the business was asked about their as is and to be processes, and then when we did the realization and we did the configuration of the system, and when we did the end processes, and when in the final preparation, when we are showing the system to the business users, the business users uh, said that this is not what we expected from SAP. I mean, whatever our expectations were there, it is not so, not met. So the non-meeting of the expectations was the problem. So so when we are in the final preparation stage, where we have nearly at the end of the project, and then business users saying that we didn't expect this and we had to redo entire thing. So there used to be times when the project used to go in red because of non-acceptance. So now the SAP has come with activate methodology. So S4 HANA is not using the SAP methodology because of the limitations it had and the issues it emerged during the time. So now it is using the activate methodology for the S4 HANA projects, and this activate methodology is more on based on the agile methodology. So it is not following the Big Bang approach, and it says that it is based on some three pillars. So one of the pillar is best practices. So there are some systems available for best practices scenario, where the consultant can show to the users the end-to-end process and take the concurrence that this is how the system will happen or work. This is the standard scenario, this will happen, so that you can buying can be possible at a very early stage. So you can do in piecemeal way, keep on doing your realization and do some configuration and keep on showing to the business the way agile methodology does, and not do it at the end. So when you do at the end and when the users do not accept, there's a lot of issues. So as and when something is prepared, you show them and take a buy. So this activate methodology has these stages of prepare, explore, realization, deploy, And the important step is to do a fit gap analysis. So you have to do the scoping, and then you start with the fit gap analysis. And instead of doing the costly blueprinting, we do the fit gap analysis, where we ask the questions and try to understand that how the SAP is fitting, and how there is a gap between their expectations and what SAP can give. So this continuous process happens, and you keep on showing them the processes from the best practices and take a buyout. So this active methodology is much more interactive, and it should not lead to the issues which ASAP was doing. So these are the issues which has happened for the methodologies. So with this, the my uh, session for today is over, and so the last summaries of the summaries and the key takeaways. So what is the different takeaways which SAP S4 HANA has given? So SAP S4 HANA is the next generation SAP business suite after R3 and R2, and it is the OLTP and OLAP. That means the real-time analytical systems. So the analytical system become more real-time transaction, and they sit in the same system. So they are not in separate servers. So 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 the business gets more of online or real-time data, and it has a more renewed approach and renewed SAP modules, and it has a very good user experience with Fiori, connected with all devices, and flexible and simple. So these are the, in short, the summary and key takeaways of SAP S4 HANA. And with this slide, today's session is getting over. And from